The following program is brought to you by the University of Alabama.
Daniel Wallace's novel, Big Fish, was turned into a successful motion picture by Tim Burton and is now to be a Broadway musical. Could things get any better? Yes. On top of that, Wallace has produced a short film from his story, Full Boat, and has a new, fanciful, mythical novel, The Kings and Queens of Rome. I spoke with Daniel Wallace at the Alabama Booksmith in Homewood, Alabama.
Daniel, it's nice to see you again.
It's good to see you.
How are things at Chapel Hill? I envy you living there.
I envy me. Yeah, I can't believe I'm me. You know, I've got a great place to live. I've got a great job at UNC. Life is good.
Yeah, you're getting some students that are worthy of your time and effort?
I get about the number of students that you would expect. You know, 1 out of 100 can go on and be writers, and I think it's easier to get in the MBA than it is to become a professional writer. And none of my students are going into the MBA either.
No.
Yeah.
No, I doubt they're tall.
They're not very tall.
No, I've looked at classes of
Yeah,
MFAs.
yeah, writers generally,
They're not.
and they're not physically fit either. You know.
This, you have a new book, and in fact, you're on tour promoting The Kings and Queens of Rome. But we have some unfinished business, and all of it good.
Okay.
I understand that Big Fish, the novel, and then, of course, the Tim Burton movie is now going to be a Broadway musical.
Yes.
I know nothing about this. Tell me about it. Who did it? Why did they do it? Have you seen anything? Have you heard it?
I don't know why they did it. It doesn't make sense to me. The movie didn't make sense to me either. But they made the movie, and then the people who made the movie, as they were making it, said, you know, this would make a pretty good musical. And everybody agreed. And so about that time, they started messing around with the idea, writing the book. They found a great composer in Andrew Lippa, and for the last, since 2003, they've been slowly working on it between the different projects that John August and Andrew have. And finally, you know, song by song, scene by scene, they were able to put together the musical. And so it's been about a year since they started working on it for real with actors and singing it through. They've got a great director, Susan Stroman, who's huge, you know, there. I'm not an aficionado of Broadway, so I'm just repeating what I know.
Good.
She's great. I saw the show in previews in Chicago, April 19th.
Oh, it's been on the stage. You've seen it.
Yeah. They usually take it out of town for a month or so.
Yeah.
And show it and work it out the kinks, which is something I would love to be able to do as an author, publish my book, show it to somebody like you, go back, rewrite it.
Then work out the kinks.
And then work out the kinks, you know, and then have the official publication at some point.
Big Fish 2.0.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't think. Well, give me some sense. I mean, I know the book pretty well, and there are sad songs, there are happy songs. I mean, what's the tone of it? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, it's a traditional musical in that there's the inciting incident, of course, based on the same as it is in the book, and the movie especially, is that there's this separation, this argument between the father and the son that keeps them apart for a while, and the father gets sick and the son comes back. So all these songs, there are the fun songs, there are the dance numbers, and there's some really wonderful love songs, and of course,
The man has 2 women.
well,
They're bound to be love songs.
Yeah, and especially his wife. You know, when he meets his wife, it's a song called "Time Stops," which is generated from the movie. There's a scene where everything stops when he sees her, and just beautiful. And by the end of the show, of course, if you're not crying, you are thrown into prison immediately.
Did they leave in the jokes? the actual
There-
telling of whole jokes?
No, of course, there's just not enough time for that. You know, that's one of the things you can do in a book that you can't do
Right.
in this. I can just mess around forever.
My feeling, based on total ignorance, is that the musical, the Broadway musical, will follow the film in terms of what was left out from the book more than it will go back and follow the book, because
Yeah.
of the structure of the book is obviously you can move around. a
There's
lot more
no
freedom.
structure. There's almost no structure in the book, and there's no arc, a necessary arc that you have to have in a movie and
Right.
in a musical. So yeah, there is that. They're going to have to draw primarily from the movie to tell that story. That being said, it does draw on more elements from the book than the movie did, I think. There's a much stronger mythic idea in the musical that the movie just didn't have.
Well, they can go back. It's there to use.
Yeah.
In the movie, you had a small part.
It was
Will-
small
will we
but
be
very
fl-
important.
Yeah.
Crucial.
Will we be flying up to New York to see you on stage?
Every night I'm going to go up there and come back from my class. Yeah.
Not
If I
not
could sing
happening.
or dance, I would be there.
Well, did you do any of the kind of writer fixing? You know, the playwrights in the audience and
No.
no, just
No, this is just I'm along for the ride.
right. I have asked you several times, and over the last, you and I have been having chats for 16 years, which seems to me wrong, but
Yeah, I don't
but there it
understand
is.
how that happened.
And I've always been an admirer of your short stories. I may be the only one, but I am, nevertheless. And I've always been looking for a volume of those stories because I see them individually once in a while.
Right.
What's going on with that?
Yeah. Well, the truth is, while there have been a lot of wonderful collections that have been published recently, especially, and some of them, like Wells Tower, Jamie Quattro recently published a great one. There are newer voices, people that aren't acquainted. Traditionally, you did start out with a book of stories and then move to the novel, sort of an introduction to the writer. It's harder to do it the opposite way. If you put novel on a book, you're going to sell, say, 100 copies. If you put short stories on a book, cut that in half at least. My second book, Ray in Reverse, was essentially stories tacked together to create this arc of a man's life from end to beginning. And if you look at the book now, it doesn't say novel or short stories on it because it's not really a novel and it's not really short stories, but you couldn't put stories on there because they knew that would affect the sales. And so it's not, especially this time for somebody like me, if I have a novel, they'll publish the novel.
Right. I remember back when I read Ray in Reverse, and you and I had been talking about it, that some of those chapters in the novel had been published as stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they get blended together.
Yeah.
I think after The Kings and Queens of Rome makes its appropriate big hit,
Right.
you just demand that you gather up the
I
stories
know.
and put them out.
I should demand. I should be more obstreperous.
But you have now Big Fish, of course, with Tim Burton. You have what novelists mostly really, really want. You have a novel that was made into a movie. And now you're working more and more in terms of screenplay. I have seen the short of what was Full Boat. How do we describe? Tell me, how do you describe that 15-minute movie?
Well, it's really a story about what men will do to get what they want.
It was a Saturday night, 2 a.m. The room was so smoky it felt like we were playing cards in the clouds.
It's a poker game in which there could not be higher stakes, essentially it's a father-son story.
I've always liked you. You know that, don't you?
I'm your son, Dad.
Even so. I guess you know how I lost it, huh?
Lost what?
The leg, the leg!
You know, it's about a father getting to know his son, and a son getting to know his father. Without giving too much away, you know, it's exciting, it's fun, it's humorous and bloody.
But you made a 15-minute movie.
15-minute movie. I wrote the script. There was a director out in Hollywood who I didn't know at the time, who was a friend of my brother-in-law, which is, you know, how these things happen, just weird. And I sent him a bunch of stories for him to look at to see what he wanted. He picked that one. I wrote the script, and over the course of time, he filmed it, and it was an amazing adaptation. I was so happy with it. I was so happy to have a bigger part in it than I have in any other process as far as that goes. And now we've decided to pursue it on a larger scale. I've written a feature-length version, so as opposed to this script is probably 12 pages long, the feature is over 100 pages long. And it draws from elements in that short to create a much bigger, on a much bigger canvas. And it's out to actors now. It's being cast. So very exciting.
Well, you had a good professional cast for Two-Legged Rat Bastards.
Right.
Which was
right.
the screen title for Full Boat.
Right.
It was interesting. When I looked at that, and I've seen it a couple times now, the wonderful advantage. Usually, you talk about how the advantage goes to the written word, because of course you can set things anywhere, do anything. But there you had in the poker game, which is not in the short story. Well, it's in the short story, but it's a conversation between father and son. Instead of the father just telling the son about the poker game,
you get to see it.
You get to see it.
Yeah, yeah. And to me, that's why I like writing scripts, is because it's very sensory. You know, you can't show anything. You have to show everything, and it's because you can't talk about what somebody's feeling. And I've always hated to write about what people are feeling. I love to use the senses. So that's what draws me to that form.
The new book, as I sure I'm not alone in this, but I thought of your 5 books. I mean, it's you know, I know you have. If you had 5 children, I wouldn't presume to think one was prettier than the rest. But I do like Mr. Sebastian the best. And I started this one, and I thought this is a lot like Big Fish, The Kings and Queens of Rome. But reading a little interview that you had done for publicity purposes, I thought, that puts it in a new light. You started off with a particular sentence, moment, scene. What were the 2 sisters? What is is it a sentence?
Yeah, it was the first few sentences of the book as it stands now.
Right.
Sometimes I'll sit at the computer and just type thoughtlessly and see what words come out.
Yeah.
And I wrote this sentence. Rachel and Helen McAllister lived together in the home they grew up in. As far as anyone could tell, this is where they would die as well. I had that for a long time, and I felt like something was there. Well, I mean, in that first sentence, there's a whole lifetime, you know, and so it suggests so much. You know, I've only written 5 books, and I've written 25 or 35 stories, so not every sentence is going to suggest a novel.
Right.
That this one did, and I let it sit there for years. I wrote it while I was finishing up Mr. Sebastian, and kept going back to it and thinking, what is the story here? What is going on? Where do these girls live? What is their history? I didn't know that one was blind. I didn't know what the other one looked like. And as the story progressed in a very logical way, even though the book itself is very magical and mythic, and the story opened up to me.
Right. There's one of the meanest pieces of sibling rivalry in all of literature in that book.
Yeah, that doesn't get much worse.
The sighted girl tells the beautiful blind girl she is really ugly.
And that the world is a dark and a dangerous place, and there are doors and homes you can open up, and a river of blood flows out because so many people have been killed there.
Yeah.
Flesh-eating birds, and the the sister has no way of knowing any different because her older sister has total control.
Yeah. I think there's a nice paradox there. I found that the sister who has achieved total control and made Rachel totally dependent upon her doesn't really want that responsibility.
Right.
It's a burden. I mean,
Yeah.
she's created it, and now she's got a younger sister who's afraid of everything, can't go anywhere by herself.
Right. She
Totally
takes advantage
dependent.
of it. She takes advantage of it, and
Yeah.
she tells, as you said, tells her beautiful sister that she is in fact ugly, and that the atrociously ugly sister that she's in fact beautiful.
Yep.
So her blind sister is the only one in the world who thinks she's beautiful,
Yeah.
and keeping her around creates that fiction.
Right.
You know.
Rome, R-O-A-M. I mean, I talked about your book on the radio, and I went along a bit before I realized that listeners had no idea that it was spelled R-O-A-M, and I spelled it. Why Rome?
Well, I almost regret it because
Too punny.
Well, because just what you're doing. You know, you have to explain it. You have to say,
Yeah.
well, it's not R-O-M-E, it's R-O-A-M.
Yeah.
I would like to pretend that I know what I'm doing as a writer. I don't know what I'm doing as a writer. And when my character says something is called Rome, it's called Rome. And it's not in the sense that my characters take over the book at all. It's not that. I'm in control of the book. But once that was suggested, I kind of liked it. It did fit in with my idea of what this book is, which is it's completely fictional. It takes place, you don't know when and you don't know where. Most everything, the rules of the world are about the same as they are for us. There's just slightly different.
Or night and day and gravity, but then
yeah.
it stops.
But then things happen differently. But
Yeah.
it's this kind of idea of a multiverse where there's another world that's almost identical to ours, except things are just slightly different.
Is it any use to ask you where Rome is? You said in the book it's 400 miles from Chicago, and I actually got out a map and.
Did I say that?
Yeah, I think so. They travel.
I'm going to take that out in the
They
paperback
travel from
edition.
California to Chicago, and then they travel 400 miles to Rome. And I got out a kind of compass, a little.
Well, you know, that's too specific. I'm going to have to. I'm going to have to take that out in the paperback version.
I thought Tennessee.
Really?
Right.
I don't think I've created this place in my mind that is nowhere.
Nowhere, right.
Yeah.
But there are mulberry trees there.
Right.
McAllister has gone, this enterprising, heartless young fellow, went to China, kidnapped a Chinese man, and along with him a box of silkworms, took them back to America, and then went in search of mulberry trees. Are there any mulberry trees in America? I don't have a clue.
Sure. Of
Where?
course. In my book.
Well, good. Where's that?
You're tricking me. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
There are mulberry
I've never
trees,
been very
though.
successful with that.
I do about 5 to 10 minutes of research on every book, and there are mulberry trees in America.
I have no idea if there are or not. I
You
guess
believe me?
Sure,
All
I'm,
right, good.
I'm happy to do
then
it.
we can move on.
One of the things that happens in this book and other books as well is that something that happens, nothing just goes away. Everything, the past is more than prelude. The past is fate. It controls people's destinies for 2 and 3 generations. McAllister has sinned. I mean, he has done an awful thing. He's taken this man from his wife and family. He's kidnapped him. He's taken him to North America.
Right.
He's lonely. And that sin will come down to the girls? Is that
Yeah,
pretty
that's
much?
that's where it ends. Yeah, with the girls. I mean, nothing goes well for them, and everything ends with them.
You set up a silk factory in this place where the mulberry trees are.
Yeah.
Has there ever been a silk factory in America?
That I think you'll have.
You could lie to me on this because I don't know.
Yeah, I think Wikipedia has some stuff to say about that. I don't care, if there has actually.
I just never have heard of it. I thought, well, that's wonderful. I wonder
Yeah.
how you would do that.
Yeah, how would you? I guess you have to read the book to find out.
Well, it's near the river with the magic healing water.
Yes, it's close by. Yeah.
Wherever that river is, it nourishes mulberry trees.
Well, yeah, I guess so. I haven't really thought about it. Yeah.
There's another community besides Rome, which is even, I mean, Rome has fallen. I mean, the Rome thing got in my head. It was always all roads lead to Rome. When in Rome, do as the Romans
Right.
do. And finally, the decline and fall of Rome, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there's this other place that's even awfuler
Mm-hmm.
than the declined and fallen Rome. This
Yeah.
other.
It's never declined because it's never ascended.
Never got anything.
Never got about. Yeah.
Is there a metaphor there? I mean, one can project a metaphor onto it, but what do you mean? What's the name of that other little?
The valley.
The valley.
There's not even a name.
Right.
There's not even a name.
What goes on there? What was in your kind of spiritual geography?
Right.
What does the valley? I can get with Rome and it's
Right.
the product of greed and ambition and
Right.
so on. What's the valley all about?
Well, I don't work with metaphors, but but with characters, and their actions and what they mean to them. And Ming Kai, the Chinese man who Elijah kidnapped, leaves Rome one day and tries to do something great. He thinks that he can do what Elijah did, but better, because he's also a good man. Their horses die in the valley, and he says, this has got to be a sign. This is where we make our home, and it's the worst place that you could ever possibly make a home, on the hillside where it rains, and all the crops get washed away every time it rains, and your little hut is moist and wormy, and so it's a total failure. And
it's awful.
It's an awful place, and it's sad, but what he tried to do was a failure, because he is not that guy. He is not a great man. He's a good man. And great men make things and will do anything that they want to do it. And Ming Kai is not that person.
Yeah, being a great man and being a good man are not they're not mutually exclusive, maybe, but they're not the same thing either.
At all.
Yeah, old McAllister was hard.
Yeah,
It's
a tough one.
He was tough. You don't use metaphor, but there are objects in this book, and one of the objects, and the object that you or someone chose to put on the cover, was the frail and soon to collapse suspension bridge.
Right.
If you had actually, if this were a literature class instead of a creative writing class, I'd say, write me an essay
Yeah.
on the meanings of that little bridge. Go ahead, do that.
And that is a good example of why I teach creative writing and not literature. Yeah, I've never been good at literature. I've been a lot better at writing than that. And explaining things has been only made more difficult with books that I've actually written. Very hard for me to discuss them from that distance. I'd leave that to people like you.
I had a conversation on this show once 20 years ago with Tom Rabbit, a poet. You may know him a little. And he wanted to be interviewed, and then when we sat down to talk, he said, I don't want to talk about my poems. And
Right.
I said, well, you have to talk about your poems. That's the nature of the literary interview. And he said, no. And things didn't go that well at that. They go much better for us.
Here, I think it's going well.
Yeah, this is just fine.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to project onto the book a pattern of meaning, but I think, as with a lot of your work, it's about forgiveness. I think ultimately.
Yeah, that's absolutely. That's exactly what the book is about. And when you boil everything down, there's a lot to boil down to get to that point. But I think that is the one word that you have to come away with when you read this.
And you have to do it.
Well, you don't want to instruct. It's not a fable in as much as it has a moral.
Right.
But you can look at what happens to the characters and the choices that they make and come to your own conclusions.
Yeah. It just seems if you don't, you just stay in the soup.
Yeah, but there's a difference between what happens in a book and what happens in real life.
Oh yeah.
And so I think if I were advising you, I would say yes, please. I think it's a good idea to forget.
I know a lot of what's in your immediate future. First, the promotion of this book, the Hollywood. You're bound to be excited about the Broadway show of Big Fish. You got a Hollywood film cooking. Did you wrote the screenplay for Kings and Queens of Rome as well?
Yeah, and it's out now too.
That's right. In terms of your next book project, do you have something that you're thinking of, a direction you're thinking about going in?
Yeah. Well, we have to admit that it's all downhill from here. This is it can't get much better than this, and I'll never have another year like this. So you're catching me at the top of my game. The next time I'm going to probably look a lot different.
I don't know. When Tim Burton put your novel on the screen, I think we had the same conversation, and things have continued to go well.
Oh yeah. I have a novel that I want to finish up this summer because one of the great things about being a teacher is that you get this time off to write, and I don't want to disappoint my university by letting them think that I just spent the summer, working on my tan and that my burgeoning melanoma. So I do have a book that I'm working on about a guy. It's going to be much easier to understand and to follow than Kings and Queens of Rome.
Oh.
It's about it's a funny story about a very sad man.
Well, I've always enjoyed your work, and I look forward to the next one.
I look forward to talking to you about it.
Thank you, Daniel. This has been a pleasure.
Bye-bye.
To order this season of Bookmark on DVD, call 1-800-463-8825. Additional information can be found on our website at www.alabamatv.org.